Hi, Alley Cat.
Hi.
Welcome to a Cosmic Creator Coven. Oh,
Okay. Sorry,
right.
I'll turn off all my phones.
We'll do it again. How's that?
Oh my God, I'll just put, okay. I'm sorry, I'm gonna put on
No, you're fine.
off completely.
Okay. All right, Alley Cat. Welcome to another Cosmic Creator Coven. And Allie is the Lux Panthers resident Diamond Buddhist Wisdom speaker, and I'll have her go ahead and introduce herself. And we're talking on transcending consciousness, or transformation of consciousness, transcending cycles through transformation of consciousness in whatever different modality she or the guests have used. And I'll have you go ahead and introduce yourself and the topic today that you chose to share with us.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Jordan. This is really a pleasure, and it's truly exciting for me to talk about transforming consciousness, just because I feel so passionate about it myself and how it's transformed my life. I am a yoga teacher. I'm based out of Pittsburgh. I teach a number of different styles. I also teach meditation, and that's been that's going to be a big talking point today. There's different styles of meditation and different teachings, but my training came from a traditional Tibetan Buddhist lineage. So that's where a lot of my influences come from. And, you know, just talking with Jordan as well, I feel like a lot of the teachings and so forth that I've been studying really go along hand in hand as far as personal growth and transformation. Today, I did want to talk about this concept of innate goodness, but I'm going to talk about as well a meditation practice, limiting beliefs, and how all of that is related as well, and as part of this whole package. So I guess what I wanted to start with was this idea of limiting beliefs, and it's something that I come back to often, maybe sometimes even daily, and almost everyone walks around in life with this sort of suit of armor of protection on, made up of our own anxieties and neuroses that we just pick up along the way. Everyone has these, right? And the Shambhala tradition, the Buddhists call this a cocoon, right? And that's a nice image, either a suit of armor or a cocoon. And it's every time we spin a story about whatever is stressing us out, we wrap ourselves in this cocoon tighter and tighter. And it starts to get thick, right? It starts to become this layer of protection against the world, right? And how can we just sort of build up this wall of protection, this cocoon of anxiety and our thoughts of the outside world to really avoid pain, essentially. And the idea is that eventually we cover ourselves up with this thick layer of thoughts about ourselves, and that eventually it makes it very hard to see beyond this thick layer, right? And gradually through a meditation practice, that's the tool that I use, and I would define meditation as well as a tool to place the mind in an intentional state. So I really feel like it's a tool through this process, and we start to realize that we've created the own cocoon, right? Yeah. And that slowly, and this doesn't happen overnight, right? We're all still working on this. We can start to slice through the layers and get to know yourself better. and see your stress more clearly. Also, you have a possibility then to start to be kind to yourself with realizing that you can look directly at fear, then stay present with it. And eventually, if you're able to see your fear, see your stress clearly, you can shift it and change it. This starts to help you let go of the stories you tell yourself with more ease. This practice of slowly slicing away the layers. Like first, right, we have to sort of slice away these layers that we tell ourselves in order to have better reactions, relationships with the outside world. So essentially, I wanted to talk about this concept of basic goodness, which personally is, and how I'm getting into that is, so the idea is that when we're able to sit with ourselves and sort of see that those layers of cocoons that we've created, these ephemeral thoughts of anxieties, these fears, that deep down under all of those layers, we are intrinsically good. And to really start to identify with that and how that can be transformational. There's a concept that this is inherent and this is fundamental. And I think that this can be actually really powerful in countercultural as well. This idea that I think so often, and we find this through our limiting beliefs, that we realize we tell these stories to ourselves, right, in this cocoon, that maybe I don't deserve good things because I'm not a good person, or such and such an idea of someone else as being bad, and so they should have bad things happen to them. And why is this happening to me? But when you start to change this, I would say basic goodness goes hand in hand with this idea of core beliefs that you talk all the time about, Jordan. Of like, at the very core, at the center, after you take away the cocoon, the layers, that we're good. And when you start to just really think about that, and this can be a practice, right, of when you start to sit and find stillness and you notice thoughts of, I'm not good enough or something, you can come back to this sense of, I'm okay right now, right? If we're inherently good, there's a sense of wholeness and completion as well with that nothing has to be fixed, that you can start to self-soothe, you can be safe and healthy. And it's just something that I've been playing with as well, as far as innate goodness in regards to relationships with difficult people as well. So once you I think, find it in yourself, right? It's like you have to realize that it's in other people. And it's easy to start with people you love, right? And you can see that they're good. And then you can expand that out to maybe people that are neutral, like your barista or a friend, like neutral, and realize like, hey, they have a lot, a family as well, and so forth. And then eventually being able to find the goodness as well in difficult people. And so this sort of practice of finding the core beliefs of innate goodness within yourself, letting it to expand your personal views on yourself first, and then as well as transform your relationships with others has been a deeply moving practice. And I think that we all can catch a glimpse of this, right? So the idea is that if you've ever sat and like trying to meditate or finding stillness can be really hard, but there's always a time, sometimes when you almost stop trying and you
the
see
surrender.
it, you know,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and you're catching that glimpse of bliss.
Totally.
And it's like the way I like to describe it is, so you know when your cat is like trying to open the door with their paws,
Yeah.
and you're opening the door and you're pushing, it's like pushing, and a little bit of light is seeking, it's coming through. That's that moment of just like, I think I've had interaction with divine bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually after that kind of pushing, it comes to be that it can expand to all the time. That's infinite bliss, right? That's enlightenment.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I guess playing with this idea that it can be challenging at first to explore these concepts, but knowing that, okay, if I can find goodness within myself for a minute, maybe I can find it for 5 minutes. Maybe I can start to play with it for 10 minutes. And knowing that possibility that it can expand and affect others, that your mind can affect your life and affect others. And really, once you once you have sort of an awareness of that, you know, bringing that to your practice as well, knowing that like that's sort of what you, in a traditional Tibetan practice, the first step is to generate the wish, it's called. And the wish is knowing that if you work hard to train your mind, you can achieve bliss, and it will affect others as well. And
yeah, I love, for me,
with that.
yeah, I have so much, like, I feel like you and I have been vibing on the same wavelength now for a while, but we just use like different dialects in terms of like kind of what modality or wisdom schools like we've kind of come through. And I consider myself a spiritually ambiguous, like, because I'll be like spitting out like some witch spells and then like quoting the Bible the next thing, and like, you know, just kind of this conglomerate of information and resource and knowledge, because it's all ancient, it's all the same ancient wisdom. And I love what you were saying about, you know, this innate goodness. And today I was thinking about how essentially we are all source, and source divided itself into two parts: light being the consciousness and love being like the material that composes each dimension. And I was, you know, I was talking, I like what you said about, you know, bliss and kind of this like moment of like surrender. And I'm trained in transcendental meditation, and then I kind of just make my own meditations. But there is this moment when you're sitting there and like repeating the mantra and just kind of observing the thoughts coming up. And then there is this moment of just surrender. And I don't necessarily believe in terms of like letting go of our desires, in terms of like, I think within the spiritual community there's almost like this you let go, as if your cats, you're like in line, my cat's sleeping on the bed right now, you let go is almost like giving up, where I think like what it's actually meaning is like there's this detachment and this surrendering into the allowance of it to unfold. And in my opinion, like you said, this wish, or I call it like this desire, is a gift from our superconscious or higher self, because it's that, desire, which is meant for us, any desire that you have is meant for you, no matter how small, big, weird, strange it is, because it's a tool to transcend cycles and transform your consciousness. And it's your duty to step into that desire, because you're transforming your consciousness. You're realigning with yourself, which is your pure identity. And this idea of like surrender, because I was like telling you earlier, I was reading the last few lines about Jesus on the cross, which is like crucifixion. You're talking about, you know, the cocoon, the butterfly. So it's like the same kind of thing, like this metamorphosis experience of shedding, releasing, of literally dying to the old beliefs in order to transcend and move forward. And what he said first was like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, which is like in my likening of this, it's like Father being awareness, or God, universe, great mystery. Forgive them, for they know what they do. Like, we are unconscious of our thoughts. We're not aware of our thoughts. Forgive ourselves for these years of shitty thoughts that have essentially cocooned us or nailed us to our own like cross, like the cross that we carry and that we bear. And then he says to the thieves who are with him, and in my opinion, this is my opinion, I feel like everybody has the absolute potentiality to be completely enlightened, to be an avatar, to be a Buddha, to be a Christ, to be a Krishna here in this form of incarnation. It doesn't have to be like in a next realm, like here and now. And the thieves were with Christ on the cross. So they were getting nailed to the cross. They were surrendering their old belief systems. They were dying to the old person that they were. And he said, you know, today we will be in paradise. Today we'll be in paradise. Paradise, like the utopia, the heaven that we're like creating on earth. And then the last thing he said, which is the surrender, is Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit, which is like Father God awareness, which is, you know, co-creative force of all of this stuff, into thy hands. Hands, in my opinion, this is all Jordan interpretation, this molding of the universe, of the light and the love, which is the substance of it. I commit thy spirit. And I was actually thinking just a few days earlier, what does spirit really mean? In my opinion, it's the pure identity. Like you said, you call it the innate goodness. I call it like source, pure identity, or this like these root beliefs of being worthy, whole, complete, good enough, deserving, all those things. It's essentially the same kind of but that's the bliss, right? That's the surrendering, like surrendering our old self and then moving into bliss, like resurrecting, like the power to raise the dead, which I think everybody has the ability to do, because we're raising ourselves and back, or even restoring ourselves, if you want to think about it like that. It's just moving into that pureness again. And I was pureness, or pure, in one of the subliminals wrote pure I-ness as well. Okay, so many thoughts. Like you and I could talk about this forever.
We could just like vibe together, because I think, I mean, you realize that I've always been interested, like my bookshelf's behind the screen, but like I have all the texts. I've always been interested in religion. I was raised Catholic Christian, but then, you know, wanted to get away from that. There was that rebellion phase where I was like really against religion and any sort of dogma. And now I'm like into it as well. I have, you know, the Bhagavad Gita, the sutras. Like I'm like, I love, you know, because innately, like it always comes back to those same teachings. Like, and that's like that's the exciting part to me. It's just a different way of using language to describe the same things, which is really beautiful. And I love this idea of playing with a butterfly to describe transformation and growth, because I think something we've been talking about recently is this term, like, you just think you can be like rainbows and butterflies all the time, or like and as like insulting. And it's like it's not, to me, like, and we're like, how can we actually like embrace this attitude of like rainbows and butterflies when it comes to growth and transformation. Like this idea that it always has to be a dark soul of the night. Like maybe it can be a beautiful transformation. Like growth can be challenging, but maybe it can be the metamorphosis of, you know, a caterpillar growing into a butterfly and transforming into something light and beautiful. And it's just something really interesting of this just here. And I love the idea of, you said raising ourselves for others is what I wrote down as well. And that's really interesting concept as well. I think that is pervasive in all of these sort of texts, is to, it's like, if you're not going to do it for yourself, maybe do it for someone you care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many reasons do you need to like change your life?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love, you and I are just vibing the same wavelength, because I've been just sitting around. So I did a plant-based medicine journey this past summer. You know, it was very ceremonial and moved through a lot of things. And one of it was like, I just was like, I want to help millions of people heal. And that sounds like a wild declaration. Like, who the fuck do I think I am? And then I was like, you know, came to this idea of like, in terms of one person in enlightenment can elevate and train, you know, 2 million people. And then like, if you think of the group that we're in right now, there's like 20 to 30 of us. And if all of us could just declare we're enlightenment and persist in that until it hardens into fact, how many other people could we entrain? And I always love when you were like, a rising tide raises all ships. Like, I think that's really beautiful, because there, even within the spiritual communities, I do feel like there is this limiting belief that, oh, when you ascend, all these toxic people are going to just fall away. Like all this stuff. Like, okay, you don't have to keep toxic people around if you don't want to, but this assumption that like, I'm rising up and you guys are all just chains, and I'm going to cut the chains and
hierarchical,
cut the dead weight. Like, fuck you, all this stuff. Peace, love, fuck you. And then like just rise up. But really, when we're actually like, you know, focused inward, as within, so without, you'll entrain and elevate other people as well. And because you're creating this desired state of existence, however you want to, what language you want to use it for, this like dimension of consciousness where like those things are getting filtered and purified out. And I was, you know, I've been observing this, because sometimes what people say to us, sometimes it's their own limiting beliefs, and sometimes it's the externalization of our limiting beliefs, being like our thoughts are words, and words are expressed in the prana, yama, kosha. So it's the sound is it's a you know, manifestation is to make invisible visible. So it's kind of like still invisible, but you can hear it, right? So it's the thoughts being made visible. And so when other people express their words to you about what it is they think in terms of things, like I've been sitting with that, like, you know, you can't, how are you supposed to know your joy if you don't do your shadow work? And at the time I was like, you know, I was like really hurt by that, because I feel like both you and I, from knowing each other personally, we have sat with a lot long dark nights of the souls and have been through things. And
we're like, a good teacher, you should learn from us. We've been through the shit. That's why you go to a good teacher, so you don't have to make the same mistakes we did.
Exactly. Like I am giving
You'd be dumb to make the same mistakes we did.
Partake from the fruit of the tree of life, not from the tree of the good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. You don't want that one. I'm giving you the fruit from the tree of life. Just take that one. Just eat the bitch. You know, just eat it. Take it. So that's how I feel on that. But you know, this a concept that like, you know, how can you know your joy if you don't do the shadow work? And it was like, oh, this is my limiting belief showing up saying that I have to prove my worth in order to have joy, when really like joy is our birthright. And I was even discussing with another friend too that like even as the spiritual communities, it's like there is this kind of like austere, like I'm a shadow worker. It's like, like sexy and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, there is like I've legit done trauma work and shadow work, and there's not like a real sexiness to it. It's not. And to say that like you have to know, I was thinking, I have so many thoughts on this, but like the law of polarity. Oh, the law of polarity, like good and bad and good and evil. But isn't that just a limitation? Don't we think enlightenment
Totally.
in light can transcend over the law of polarity itself, like to obliterate that? Because if we are that pure source is not light and dark, it's light and love. That's the original fabric of the universe, is light and love. And so yeah, I do believe that we can live a more noble, happy in life that has majority of rainbow unicorns, butterflies in it. I mean, I still have my days where I'm like, fuck this shit and all this stuff, and I just want to burn Rome to the ground. But I will say, and what we focus on expands, and the more I've focused on like innate goodness inside myself, inside other people, and not the shadow work, and not going to the graveyard to continue to dig up the bones. Like, at what point do you let the dead bury the dead? At what point is the painful past past? Like, what point do you give up the old man? What point do you crucify yourself to resurrect? Like, or do you just continue, like, I don't know, this idea of like quickening. And yeah, I think it's all the same knowledge too, because like when I go back and I read like Yogananda, and he talks about like, I always loved in the autobiography of Yogi that like the appearance of like the enlightenment will, like, to a Christian it will appear as Jesus, or to like a Buddhist it will appear as Buddha. Like, it's just like a symbol for that itself. And talking about the cities or the yogi superpowers in that book, when we all have the ability to do that, I firmly believe we all have the ability to make miracles in our minds. So if we could all like, yeah, if we, as within so without, like, we'll create a more noble and healthy life. And this idea of do you hide your light under a bushel? And I'm intentionally like moving beyond that, like being bold in who I want to be. And if that
that's countercultural, it's like
detracts people from me, that's fine. But I feel like in that, I was telling Emmy, I was like, you're like the sun. You don't need, like, the sun doesn't need permission to shine. It shines all the time. It shines when the earth spins away from it. It shines behind the clouds. People come out and they warm themselves in it. It shines. Continue to shine. Everyone loves it when you shine. Shine, shine, shine. Like, we don't need to descend into darkness to enjoy bliss. That's my opinion. I have descended into darkness. I have walked like down the inferno and into purgatory and ascended back up. That's great. Like, but somebody said, here, you take of the tree of life because it's yours, because it's your birthright, because you're innately good, because your source itself, like, you can have it just as you are. You don't need to prove yourself. I would have just, save me from that tree of knowledge of good and evil. I don't need that. I just want the tree of life. So, I mean, and maybe I feel like to some that might look like spiritual bypassing, but the stuff that we've talked about isn't necessarily to deny the human experience and feeling and being compassionate in those moments. But it's like, where are you putting your focus? What are you looking towards? Right. Is the question.
Absolutely. It's not, and what I talk about too, like it's funny because I'm always telling my partner, I'm going to talk about anxiety today. And he's like, it's going to be great. But no, it's like, it's good. I'm always like, yeah, we're stressed, we're anxious. And that early on of sitting it, looking it in the eye and not being afraid of it. It just, changing your relationships with stress and so forth. Not saying that it it doesn't exist. Instead, it doesn't have to have that same effect on you. And I also like this idea, and maybe we can talk about wisdom in another time, but my teacher always says when you come across darkness, drop diamonds there, drop diamonds in the darkness, cut it with wisdom and bring light to it, so you don't have to sit there. You can drop diamonds in the darkness and, move on from it, essentially. So, yeah.
I think, well, and like in terms of like, yeah, like, my best friend Emmy, like she lives across the street, but we became close like right when my whole life was falling apart. And I told her the other day, like, I was descended into like darkness. I was like, it felt like my veins were shutted. And I didn't like you shining how you were shining gave me like, I didn't need you to come down and descend into it with me. I needed you to stay where you were to like provide like the hope to look up in that direction. And I talk about like I've talked about this before, but like in Daniel and the lion's den, it's like removing the attention from the lions surrounding you, the fears like surrounding you, acknowledging them that they're there, and then like looking towards the light. And I love what you say about like, the fears, because like what resists persists, and just like not being afraid of the fear, but like kind of accepting it and surrendering it to it. And that essentially like disempowers it itself and transform you into like being completely fearless. And I mean, there's like so many elements of this, but like even in terms of like, we both have the Bikram yoga background. There is this like point in the posture, at least I feel, when it's like push, push, push this and this, but there's this point where it's just like surrender. You have to just like surrender into the posture and just trust that you'll hold yourself there. And, especially in like when you start working in some of the deeper asanas, you're like, I don't really know, like, it's like, I don't know I'm upside down. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to just like trust that the ground will support me. I'm going to trust that my, things will be okay. And there's that element of surrender, I feel like, and that's where the bliss comes in. And then the cat comes in too. Wow. My cats are like right here. They must be vibing with your cats too.
Leo, and he shows it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
This was
like you and I could probably talk for another like 2.5 hours about this. I just really vibe with this so much. So
I was thinking if you wanted to wrap this up, traditionally I end every meditation practice with sort of gathering all the goodness we created. So we spent all this time together. We transmuted a lot of energy, a lot of goodness. So we did all this good work and then sort of imagine giving it away. So just picturing that at least one or two or whoever, even if one other person feels moved by this, that this was worth it. And if we send it out to them and sort of just makes a deposit in the bank and seals in all the goodness we just created to share it with others. So I'm really happy that we can share all this wisdom and insight with everyone.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, I love you, Lux Panthers, and I love you, I value, I accept you. We are limitless. So motive be, and so with a kiss. All right.